Well, hi again. This is Scott V. I'm continuing this series giving the history of our town of Santa Fe. Hoping you'll find it interesting, give you some ideas of things you can build. Now, one reason we put the town here was, first of all, I like building in a desert. You'll have to excuse that I'm on a short render distance because it's, gets a little laggier if I go normal because it's real long view out to the horizon out there. But anyway, not only is this a desert, one of my favorite places to build, and I certainly enjoy capturing the land from the bad guys, one little chunk of fence at a time, and building roads off to the next chunk of fence, and gradually clearing all the monsters away, and putting the torches, and pretty much doing these land grabs. I just couldn't resist it because this desert is covered by a glacier, believe it or not. It's the funniest thing. As soon as I saw that, I just like, that is where I'm going to build a town. Where else are you going to get a desert that's half buried in a glacier? It's hysterical, and it produced some interesting building challenges. And here is one of them. There was this big old knob of stone here jutting out of the glacier on top of the desert. And to me, I looked at that and I said, that's going to be my wizard tower. I always like to build, darn creepers, I always like to build my enchantments and some other things a little bit off in the distance so they're not so commonplace. I always like to build them up on tops of hills, so you actually kind of have to take a pilgrimage to get the power. It's just fun. Anyway, here I am going up my icy steps, slippery icy steps, to my wizard tower in this chunk of rock. This is currently a gate because the zombies kept stealing my doors. There's a few things to consider here. First, I'm going to go all the way to the top and show you the wizard tower part of this affair. The views are just plain fun. There's our little town way down there. The glacier is difficult to tunnel into because as you dig out a block, it will sometimes turn to water, or the ones next to it will, and start dumping on you. Also, if you put a torch too close to a block of ice, it will melt, like what happened right there. So in order to make a tunnel, what I ended up doing was quickly replacing each bottom block with a piece of glass, so you can still get the transparent effect and you can still see up through the mountain all these cool vistas, but it won't melt. So it's a safe place. You won't have to worry about coming up here and having it all caved in or full of water. So tunneling into the glacier is kind of fun. Definitely a scenic area with lots of just knobby frozen hilltops. Up here on the top, we kept a little ice skating rink and a little view down into the mountain. Definitely an interesting biome. And then in here, for a wizard tower, a little place of magic, this is our enchanting lounge. Now, most of these books we won by raiding the Lich Tower down in the Twilight Forest, where we came back with about 100 books, which we used for crafting our own bookshelves and setting up our own enchanting table. So we can definitely get up to level 30 enchantments with this now, if I had the levels to do it. But that's kind of the fun. I do like to build my magical places in fairly remote areas, so it's a little bit of a pilgrimage to get things done. Alright, at normal render distance you should get a little better view of what it's really like out here. It's a very, very wild wasteland. And there's lots of caves and stuff down here too, and more icy cliffs, and there's even beehives out here in the middle of the frozen waste. They glow at night, and I can run out and try and find them, but we'll probably get ambushed by monsters. So definitely some challenges in this area. There's my little tree farm way down there, still loading. And there's the city, Santa Fe. gradually came together, starting with just the one little house, one little workshop, and gradually turned into this whole metropolis. I mean, yeah, you can certainly find bigger cities and really crazy, very inventive, creative builds all over YouTube, but this is just survival. We had to fight for every block and do our best to put it together in a sensible fashion. So there's our little town of Santa Fe. Now there's one interesting thing up here. Originally I came up here pretty much just to harness wind power. So here I put some windmills going into a battery box. And as you can see, it goes down to another level down below. Originally I was going to send all of this power to the town, but I calculated it would take 60 or 70 blocks to get down there and reach that other power grid. So what I ended up doing was I built another platform here. I ended up building a larger workshop directly under all of this power. So this wind power goes downstairs to an MFE, and I have just started putting some solar power around that MFE to boost its gain now that I've got a pretty sizable workshop growing beneath it. So here's pretty much stage 2. The power comes down here. I have future slots where I can plug in more solar panels. The MFE is pretty much full, and then the power goes down to my brand new workshop down there. So certainly easier than trying to get the power to the city, and then my workshop probably would have drawn so much power away from the city that it would have balanced out anyway. But this way it's just easiest just to generate the power reasonably locally. Just going to run down and take a look at the actual new workshop. So this was interesting because it was pretty much half embedded in the side of the hill here. It's not super organized, but for making most of the things that I need to make, it's kind of a fun little area. Over here are the recipes for the mixed metal ingots, which use a rolling machine now, and the rolling machines now need power, so that was a change from Tekkit that has been discussed a lot. That turns out it's not really that complex, and there's alternate recipes. So here, if you do it with titanium and aluminum, you actually get 6 of these ingots instead of the classic recipe where you only get 2. Of course, titanium is pretty rare. Over here I compress them, send them upstairs, and that's where I can make reinforced glass, reinforced stone. Over here is where I'll a couple forestry machines that are really handy, where I can make circuit boards and tubes. Here is a neat thing. To make carbon plate, I have a program on my crafty turtle called Coal which pretty much tells you to put stacks of 8 coal, some multiple of 8, put a stack here in the first slot, and then it will craft the first component, and then it'll craft the 2 carbon fibers together, and then automatically drop the carbon fibers into the compressor below it. So making carbon plate is just a 1-step drop. And I have a recycler for all the miscellaneous wacky stuff that we end up with too much of, like it's kind of funny turning the forestry fertilizer into industrial craft fertilizer by recycling it and combining it with bone meal. Over here is my solar panel blueprints. Again, each step of what you might possibly need is all set up. It's pre-stocked with a couple of the items. And then this is my preferred, out of all of the variations that GregTech allows, this is my preferred way of making the solar panels. It lets you substitute iron electron tubes, which are really easy to make, for the electronic circuit, which involves, I think, the 6 insulated copper wire, redstone, iron, redstone. I just like making batches of these tubes and using those instead. As I mentioned, I got the machine to make carbon plate. Silicon cells are really easy to make in the centrifuge, and so it turns out the solar panels are really not that hard to make. So there you have it. And there's plenty of room for expansion. I'm really just getting started with this here. I like to use these industrial information panels for showing how much power is in my various MFEs. They're neat to put together. Here's a quick place to make reinforced glass and stone. Again, you put the recipe here, you put the materials here, and you turn them on, and you make stuff. And you can run 2 of these off of a single chest. You know, have the iron pipe, make sure everything flows into the chest. Technically, you can run a 3rd automat off of the same chest out the back, but it's kind of hard to get to. So I usually don't do any more than these double automats. And as I mentioned, the power for this whole facility, which is going to keep growing, the power comes from up top by the wizard tower, through the MFE down to here into a LV transformer for all of the LV machinery. And that is the new workshop. Oh, over here is the Christmas tree that Iceman put in on Christmas just to be fun. And that's pretty much how the town has evolved since the early days, starting out as a single shack. Okay, there are 2 other fairly recent additions that are interesting here. One is this building here, which originally was just ladder access to the chasm underneath town. I made a really quick, easy way to hop down there. But when I needed to put an assembly table, I figured why not put it next to the main power station. And it comes in, there's an LV transformer up here that pulls power out of the town's power grid into these electrical engines. And as you can see, the electrical engines here have different circuit boards, so I've tried to tweak getting more power and improving the power usage of these machines. This one has a significant power boost, so this one draws a huge amount of power to power these lasers. And pretty much it's all set up. It's an extendable structure here, so I can attach new lasers in the future when I get around to it. And whenever we need a gadget, we just come in here, crank it up, and zippity zap, the assembly table does its thing. One other thing that's neat, again, with all those GregTech alternate recipes, some of them will let you just replace something like an electronic circuit with a redstone chipset. And a redstone chipset is just one piece of redstone that you put on the assembly table and just zap it for a while. So some of those GregTech recipes are actually really surprisingly cheap to use once you're familiar with all of the strange little electronic alternatives that zoom by in the recipe screen. But anyway, once we get our materials done, they automatically get put in the chest by the assembly table. And the next machine setup that was thrown in here was my factorization lab. I really just wanted to build one of these just to see what it was like, and I did do a video spotlight of this whole process already, so I won't spend a whole lot of time on this. But they are fun to build. These are a bunch of silver mirrors which point towards the solar turbine. The solar turbine has to be above a block of water or it won't work. I know the online tutorials forget to mention that, but it does have to have water to work. And then during the day, the sunlight reflects off the mirrors, is caught by the turbine, goes down the wire into a battery, and from there it can power all the factorization machines. The mixer, the grinder, the mixer, the slag furnace on top of a heater, and the crystallizer also hooked up to a heater. And there's my current stash of internal endless water to dump into buckets in the mixer. So the factorization lab here is the packet maker and stamper, which I really only used once just to make my diamond shards. So that's one of the latest experiments. This right here was supposed to be a wrath forge, and I tried to follow what I could find of fragments of the instructions. I can light a wrath fire in the middle, but I can't find a way to actually make it process ores. I mean, if I put an ore here, it just stays there. If I throw an ore into it, it just disappears. So I haven't figured out the wrath forge quite yet. Anyway, the town keeps developing in different directions. Here's a case where the next development was in another part of town. And that is railcraft stuff, which always seems to come in a little later because railcraft has these really neat machines that are just take up multiple blocks. They're just fun to build. Now up here is a railcraft water tower, which pulls water out of the rain in the environment. That's 400 buckets of water sitting there waiting to be used. Up the hill there is where we've planted all of the rubber trees we find around the world. There were no rubber trees anywhere nearby originally, so we had to find saplings and bring them on home. And there's a few more of them down here. But we now have enough rubber trees. Between that and the stickweed, we're all set for rubber. Now in here are my railcraft machines. Again, I decorated it with naga stone from the Twilight Forest because it's just cute with its little snake faces. And the railcraft area is pretty basic. There's the coke oven that turns coal into coal coke. And it produces creosote. And the coal coke is used in the blast furnace to turn iron into steel. The creosote oil, you put a bottle in there, and then that is used for creating railroad ties. Again, these are the automats. The railroad tie is 3 wooden slabs plus a creosote bottle. So I can just turn this on and produce railroad slabs. Now this is railroad ties. Now this is a 2-step process because the ties come in here and come up here, and then this will put 4 ties together to make a rail bed. So sometimes your double automat can function as a 2-step process. So the ties come in here, go up there, come out here, get turned into rail beds. There you go. There's a rail bed heading right up there. So it'll use the creosote bottle, make ties. The ties come in here. 4 ties makes a rail bed. So again, I can't make as many of these automated machines as I would on a Tekkit server because we don't have equivalent exchange to make heaps and heaps of materials. But for rails, these are the rolling machine recipes for rails and for powered rails. Now that I do have steel, there's a similar recipe where you use steel ingots, and I think you get 12 standard rails. And then you have to make rails into tracks. So the rails plus wooden rail beds will make actual tracks. It's a lot more intensive than the old style of making tracks, which was just, 6 iron and a piece of wood, I think, would make railroad tracks. But anyway, this is the basic railcraft setup. The blast furnace was a hoot to build because it requires blaze powder. So far, every trip to the Nether has been a disaster. So the only way I could get the blaze powder was to run whole stacks of redstone through the industrial centrifuge. Each time you do that, you get 1 ender eye dust. Then 16 ender eye dust in the centrifuge would give me 8 blaze powders. But then guess what? That will totally make, after processing 16 stacks of redstone, it makes 32 blast furnace bricks. And guess what? You need 34 of them to make a blast furnace. So that was part of the fun. I had to go down the Nether, find a magma cube to get my last piece of magma cream. Anyway, there is one item out this way. which is kind of fun. And again, I am kind of a crazy road builder. I do love to build roads off into the distance. Over here, I should probably let these chunks load, make sure there's no creepers again. Let me let these chunks load here. Over here is the portal to the Twilight Forest, which we just really love that place. It's a really pretty mod. The portal is made by putting a 2x2 block of water and surrounding it by plants, flowers and whatever, and then you sacrifice a diamond and there's a bolt of lightning and it turns into a gate. Once we explored a bit, this is a Mistcraft link to the Lich Tower. Specifically goes to the Lich Castle down in the Twilight Forest using a link. You right click it and then you click on the big black hole and that will take you straight to the Lich Tower. Now, most of the strange trees in the Twilight Forest I've been able to bring back as saplings. This one is a canopy tree. And a canopy tree drops spruce saplings. There's no such thing as a canopy tree sapling. So this was a fun project where I actually disassembled the entire tree down in the Twilight Forest and brought it home and reassembled it. A bunch of the leaves got lost, so I have to go back and get some leaves to flush it out. But just for fun and to mark the Twilight Forest portal, I disassembled an entire canopy tree and brought it back to the overworld. Sure is fun, all these strange things you can potentially do in this game. All from just taking blocks and moving blocks and breaking blocks and making stuff. And here's my neat desert with a glacier on top with a wizard tower on top. The redwood forest sure gets pretty around sunset. So it's definitely a neat place to live. And this all just came one block at a time, just moving in and doing whatever we felt like doing. So, anyway, that's pretty much how the town of Santa Fe started off as nothing and ended up where it's at. So now any future discussions I have about it should make a little more sense. But as I say, this next video I intend to take you on a tour of the two little villages we discovered. They're each really interesting for their own reasons. I think you'll find that to be a fun little trip. Anyway, I will see you next time.